All right, good morning, everybody. I hate having this up here too because it messes with my space. But thank you, Jed, for praying. Thank you, Corbin, for doing the announcements. Last week, we talked about attraction, and we started going through Mingling of Souls. And if you've not read it, if you've not heard about it, I would highly recommend looking into it, listening to some of Matt Chandler, and reading some of his stuff as well, because it's really good. So last week we talked about attraction. We talked about what it is, how it's inspired by God, it's been instilled in us by God, and that Scripture instructs us to be attracted to the opposite sex. And this week we're going to be talking about dating relationships. And the title of this lesson is Testing the Waters, Diving into Dating. So, as attraction leads into a dating relationship, over time, as you get to know another person, as you develop in your friendship, things begin to change. It doesn't stay the same. Think about your relationship with your best friend, right? When you first meet them, or when you first start getting to know them, you behave in a certain way, and you know certain things about them. But as you spend more time with them, as you get to know them more, as the two of you bond and go deeper into your relationship, you don't talk, you don't hang out in the same way that you did when you first spent time with that person, right? It develops, it changes, it becomes something more. The conversations that you have are more meaningful, they have greater depth to them, and it has a greater value to you. That friendship has greater value. And it's the same as you enter into a dating relationship. That relationship changes, it progresses, and there is a greater depth to the relationship. So, testing the waters. That's what a dating relationship is. You are friends with a person, you know who they are, you've evaluated their character, some of the things that we talked about in attraction last week. You have learned how they respond in difficult times. You have been able to see who they are and who their friends are and how they navigate life, how they deal with the different things, the different temptations that come into their lives, the different family problems that they might have. So, testing the waters. It's sticking your toe in, testing, make sure that the water's not too hot, not too cold, and hoping that while you're standing on one leg, you don't fall and hurt yourself and make a fool out of yourself while you're trying to, impress them, get to know them. So as attraction progresses, and slowly gives way into dating, there's a mutual desire to start hanging out and spending time together in a more meaningful way. And we were in Song of Solomon last week, and let's turn back there. We're going to spend most of our time finishing up chapter 1 and touching on a few verses in chapter 2 as well. So we hit this verse last week. It's verse 7 of chapter 1. It says, "Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon. For why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions?" If you weren't here last week, we talked about this is a, "Hey Solomon, where are you going to be? Because I want to be there too," type of a thing. And what she's really saying with that is, hey, I want to spend time with you. I want for our relationship to grow in a way that is going to be more meaningful and have an impact to my life in a positive way. And that's one of the things that I want to look at is, what is a dating relationship? Well, a dating relationship provides life-giving impact. It is that positive influence that has on your life. So a dating relationship provides life-giving impact. Why? Because there is reciprocity. Look at Solomon's response in verse 8. Somebody could read that. Chapter 1, verse 8.
If you do not know, most beautiful women, follow the tracks of the sheep, and graze your young goats by the tents of the shepherds.
Okay, what was his response? He replied in reciprocity. He says, hey, follow me, see where the goats are going, follow the sheep. You can come, follow us, and we'll spend time together. So life-giving impact. Dating relationship provides life-giving impact. What is that life-giving impact? Well, it's the type of impact, it's the type of relationship that, like, it brings life to your soul. It makes you want to spend time with that person. It makes everything else seem to not matter as much, and your problems are lessened. But it's a positive impact. I'm going to read in here from Meaningless Souls in page 52. It says, notice that Solomon didn't respond by telling her he would text her later only to forget, or inform her he was busy with the guys. Instead, he was playful and appropriately flirtatious, encouraging her to find him. Solomon's response was something that was encouraging to her. He was behaving in a way that made her, hey, I have attraction for you, and he's reciprocating that attraction. He is letting her know that he has that same type of feelings as well. So why else does a dating relationship provide life-giving impact? Because there's mutual respect. 1 Timothy 5:2, I'm going to summarize this one for you guys. But Paul is talking to Timothy. We've actually looked at this passage. We were in 2 Timothy. We haven't looked at this passage. But Paul is talking to people in the church, and he starts out by saying, exhort one another, teach one another, encourage one another. The older men as fathers, the younger men as brothers. And then it says the older women, verse 2, older women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters. So the reason that passage is relevant to us is the Bible commands us in 1 Timothy 5:2 to treat older women as mothers and young women as sisters. Until you are married to a young lady, guys, or primarily speaking to the guys here, until you're married to a girl, she's your sister in Christ and should be treated as a sister. It's that respect. I'm not going to do anything with her that I wouldn't, do with my sister. That type of thing. It's showing that mutual respect to one another. It is saying, I have the utmost respect for you, and I'm going to take the lead on showing you that respect and demonstrating that to you. So dating relationship provides life-giving impact. Why? Because there's clarity. Solomon created clarity, not ambiguity, in their relationship. Look at verses 9 and 10 in chapter 1. Somebody could read that.
To me, my darling, you are like my mare among the chariots of Pharaoh. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with strings of beads. Verses 2 to 10.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Guys, a little advice here. I wouldn't compare your significant other to a horse.
Obviously.
Probably not going to score you any brownie points. The language here that's being used, it's talking about one of Pharaoh's horses. Pharaoh's horses, they were white Arabian horses. The reason I know this is because somebody smarter than me studied this. Solomon, what he was doing is he was complimenting her. We've seen earlier in the passage, we're going to go back and read it here in a second, that she had some insecurities. And he was speaking directly to those insecurities and saying, look, you stand out to me. The analogy here is Matt Chandler's talking about his daughter. And his daughter spent time with horses, rode at the stables, something along those lines. And out of all the horses there was one named Toy. And he was, I don't know if he was Arabian, but he was a white horse. And he stood out amongst all the others because they were brown. I think the girl rode a horse named Gypsy, and it was brown, it was spotted. You couldn't always see Gypsy, but you could always see Toy. And what Solomon was saying here is this woman in the passage, she's the one that his eyes go to. He can see her amongst the entire room, that his eyes were drawn to her, that she stood out amongst the crowd. And that was that life-giving impact that we're talking about here. It's saying, my eyes are drawn to you, I see you. What you're insecure about, I find absolutely captivating. So not only is there reciprocity in Song of Solomon, but they shared an attraction. They were also intent on nurturing each other emotionally and spiritually. That's what we're talking about, this life-giving impact, that emotional and spiritual nurturing. And this is the first sign that their relationship, Song of Solomon's and the Shulamite woman's, was going to be life-giving. And then he goes on to tell about the story. But yeah, he says, what Solomon was saying to this woman is, I see you. When I look around, you stand out to me. You don't blend into the crowd. You're the one that my eyes go to. You are unique. You are eye-catching. I am drawn to you. You are not like the rest. Do you see how, and I'm still reading here, that this might be like water to an insecure soul, that theirs was a life-giving relationship. He didn't capitalize on her insecurities, but instead brought the good news of his approval to her. Solomon said to his prospective partner, this is a paraphrase and a translating some of the poetry, I see the things that you're insecure about, and I find you absolutely captivating. You impress me and please me, and that was life-giving. This is what Solomon was doing in these passages. These compliments that we're looking at, that was what he was saying to her. It was not, there was no ambiguity. He's not saying, yeah, I could take this relationship or leave it. He's saying, look, you are the one that I see. We're going to contrast verses 9 through 10, this life-giving impact, with verses 5 through 6 in chapter 1. She says, I'm very dark but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not gaze at me because I am dark, because the sun has looked upon me. What was she saying? She's saying she's been out in the fields. She's not like some of the other girls that Solomon might have spent time with who have grown up in the palace and spend their time inside and have this really fair skin that was considered beautiful. If you continue reading verses 6 and 7, or verse 6, I guess, it talks about that she had to work in her mother's fields, with her brothers. She had been outside. She had been working hard, doing the things that she had to do to help sustain her family, which is one of the reasons I'm sure Solomon was attracted to her, because she showed that work ethic. She showed that initiative to say, hey, I'm going to spend time with my family. They mean a lot to me. I'm going to sacrifice my personal looks to be able to help support my family. So Solomon was attracted to that, and he said, look, the things that you're insecure about, your dark skin, it makes you stand out. I think it's wonderful. So this is the type of life-giving impact that a dating relationship provides. So a dating relationship, it provides life-giving impact. It also progresses with effort and intentionality. What do I mean by that? We talked about it progressing from attraction in a dating relationship. Well, it doesn't just do that on its own. It does it when there is effort put in, when there is intentionality. It happens, it progresses with effort and intentionality when you take time to listen to godly counsel. Continuing on in this passage, look at verse 11. Do you guys have the little headings in your Bible that tells you who's talking in each of these things? Who's talking here?
Others.
It's others. So other people. It's Solomon's friends. It's Shulamite woman's friends. It's their turn to respond to what's happening in this first chapter. Somebody read verse 11.
We will make for you ornaments of gold studded with silver.
Okay. What we see here is that there's approval by godly counsel. There's an excitement here. We've just seen how he complimented her. There's an excitement here over what's happening between these two. It says, we will make for you ornaments of gold studded with silver. The friends of this couple in the text weren't fearful for their hearts and souls as the two grew closer together. They were excited. And when you have other people who are behind a potential relationship, and when you have the godly counselors in your life, the people that you value and that you trust that they have your best interests at heart, there is that excitement, and it is an encouragement to you to say, the people that I value their opinion most, they're happy about what's going on here. And that's what we see, is that there is an excitement that others have in their relationship. And one of the things that you have to watch out for is the flip side of this. It's saying, hey, I like this person. I think we can have something going on here. But if that relationship is troubling the godly counselors in your life, and they say, hey, I think you should take a step back, or I think you should progress slowly in this relationship, then it's up to you as a maturing Christian believer to say, I'm not going to resist what they're saying. I'm not going to push their counsel back and find somebody who's going to tell me what I want to hear. I'm going to listen to that godly counsel, because if you shun the godly counselors in your life and start listening to the people who tell you what you're going to hear, then it's not going to turn out well for you. Matt Chandler gives an example of a young lady in their church who began to start dating a guy, and her friends appealed to her to reconsider and to not progress forward, and she didn't listen. So she found a different group of friends who told her what she wanted to hear. And what happened after this is he outlines how not long after they dated, they started crossing lines they never intended to cross. Relationship turned almost entirely physical, became toxic. And then after about 8 months, she comes running back to her friends, hey, I messed up. I should have listened to you. And expecting to hear one of these "I told you so" lessons. Fortunately, that didn't happen for her. They received her back with grace and wanted to help build into her and help her repair from what was a bad relationship. But that's something that you have to watch out for, is to listen to the godly counselors of your life and not desire to just be told what you want to hear because, hey, I like her, she suits my fancy. So, a dating relationship progresses with effort and intentionality. How does that happen? Well, Solomon intentionally complimented her. We already saw what he said in verses 8 through 11 and how that was providing that life-giving impact to her soul. And, well, what happens after you compliment a girl, guys? They enjoy that. It says, turn over to page 59 here, because he can say it so much better than I can. But Solomon had just told her that he thought she was a knockout. We saw that in verses 8 through 10, and she was swooning. They carried each other in their romantic daydreams. It was difficult for them to be apart without thinking of one another. So Solomon had complimented her, and let's look at her response in verses 12 through 14. While the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. My beloved is to me a sachet of myrrh that lies between my breasts. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms in the vineyards of En-Gedi. It sounds very sensual. Trust me, it's not. I looked up the nard that it's talking about here. That's a fragrance. So we also see that in the New Testament.
It's also what was used by Mary Magdalene when she
Yes.
cleaned Jesus' feet.
So there was that reference, and then there's also another one in the New Testament, I think in John. I looked at both of them this week. And it's a fragrance that people who could afford it would carry, and they would carry it around their necklace, and it was like a perfume. So that's what we're seeing here. He was not actually there lying with her, but she was smelling the fragrance as she was lying on the couch carrying him in her romantic daydreams, and she was thinking about him. She was crushing on him because he had just told her, hey, you're a knockout. You please my eye. So she was sitting there crushing on him. So we see that progression of their relationship as we're going through this chapter of how they've had the dance in consideration of attraction, and they're growing together, and they start spending more time together, and she's thinking about him in a way that that girls think about guys sometimes. I don't know. I'm not a girl. But so it progressed with intentionality because Solomon took the steps to compliment her, and she responded in kind. So it progresses with effort and intentionality. Also, when Solomon initiated purity. Let's look at page 61 here. And several of you have probably heard me say this before because I really love this analogy. If we could read verse 16 and 17 first, and then I'll explain what that passage means.
Oh, you're beautiful, my beloved, truly delightful. Our couch is green, the beams of our house are cedar, our rafters are pine.
Okay, so their relationship is progressing. They're spending time together. Again, he starts out complimenting her, but he says, our couch is green, the beams of our house are cedar, our rafters are pine. Does anybody who I've not told what this means have a guess to what it means? No. Anybody else? Sorry, this is a tough one. So what he's saying here, our couch is green, the beams of our house are cedar, our rafters are pine. What are cedar and pine?
Trees.
They're trees. We're talking about the couch being green. Where are they?
They're in the field.
They're in the forest. They're outside. They're out in public. what the illustration here, the analogy is, they're out in public. They're going on dates. They're not spending time together alone, in their apartment. He's saying our couch, where we might spend time together, is outside. We are, being amongst others. We are, and this is Solomon that's saying this. If you guys, actually, this is her saying this, but it's Solomon taking the initiative to say, this is where we're going to be at. I don't know. The book says Solomon said this, but my Bible says that she said this. So I'm going to go with what the Bible says. But on the surface, this may not sound like it has much meaning, but this is the background that Solomon has set for her. And I've also said this before because I think it's a good analogy, and in the Christian culture, this is something to watch out for as well. Matt Chandler sets up the explanation of this text in this way, that nearly every Christian dating couple, knows the inerrant foolishness of movie night, where you have one person say, hey, what are we going to do tonight? Let's go grab something to eat. Well, okay, we're done with that. What are we going to do? Well, let's go back to your place and watch a movie. Not a good idea. And I love what he says here. It says, nothing good and godly ever happens between dating couples when they lie on a couch together late at night and watch a movie. It has never in the history of humankind led to discussions about cinematography or the symbolic resonance of the director's body of work or whatever. It starts out with snuggling and progresses from there. Know the inerrant foolishness of movie night, that as you begin a dating relationship or you're considering into a dating relationship, guys especially, take the initiative on this. Make sure that you are out in public, you're going on dates, you're being above reproach, that you are the ones who are creating that clarity in the relationship, okay? So a dating relationship progresses with effort and intentionality. A dating relationship also prepares for life together. How does it do that? How does a dating relationship prepare you for life together? Well, and we're going to hit on this later, but a dating relationship for Christians, it has a specific trajectory. It's moving towards something. How does it move towards something? That something being marriage? Well, because Solomon creates clarity. Let's move forward now to chapter 2, verses 1 through 2. It's your cue to read.
I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. Like a lily among thorns is my darling among the maidens.
Okay, we've seen their relationship start to progress. What happens in verses 1 through 2 is we have, this is actually, she starts out in verse 1 and it says Solomon's finishing verse 2. But we have a woman here who has a growing sense of her own identity in the relationship. She wasn't left confused. She wasn't left wondering what Solomon's intentions were. He's been very forward in saying, hey, you're the girl for me. And she has had that life-giving impact. She knows what his intentions are. He has created clarity in their relationship. He has initiated purity. He has been complimenting her. So there's clarity in their relationship. So what her response is, picking back up, verses 1 through 2, is that she didn't have to compromise who she was. She didn't have to worry about Solomon's intentions or try to decipher his advances. But the way that he led their relationship and the way that he poured into her heart that life-giving impact, it left her feeling confident and self-assured, and she blossomed. She was growing in their relationship. Like I said, they were out in public. They were going on dates. And we look at verse 2. He says, as a lily among the brambles, so is my love among the young women. Again, we're looking at a lily, a nice pretty flower among the brambles. The brambles are the thorns. She is, again, to him, he's saying, you are standing out to me. Everyone else is, thorny little pokey things, and you are the flower that I want to, hold and pick up and smell and, all of those things.
Roses are also thorny, so it's a double flower among the thorn topics.
So what Solomon was saying, he created clarity in his feelings, his intentions, his pursuit, and she could only respond by saying, there's no question that I'm above the other ladies. I'm yours, you are mine, and there's something sweet going on here. So there's clarity in their relationship. They're growing, they're moving towards something. She also had that she was developing a sense of ease and safety around Solomon. And this is...
How do you think him building her up also played into her response in this chapter? So that was something you mentioned earlier.
Putting me on the spot here.
Yeah.
How do I think that her response played into that?
Well, you mentioned. I think the point you made about him building her up was a very important one, especially in our culture. I don't want it to get lost in also talking about a great thing of clarity.
Yes. So
what impact do you think that is also having on her in her response?
And that's kind of what I was hitting on. It is directly addressing her insecurities. So, you look at the culture for today, and there are, the dating culture of today, which is totally different than like the Christian dating culture, at least it should be. You have guys who are complimenting women to, address those insecurities, but with a totally different purpose and outlook in mind. But Solomon created clarity in their relationship. He's giving her those compliments, and she's able to say, I trust you. I appreciate who you are. I can, by you saying these things to me, that I feel that ease and comfort around you, that I'm developing that trust, that I'm developing a greater sense of who I am, and he is giving an example to say, God loved the church, and I want to love you as well, as they are growing towards one another. Is that kind of?
Yeah. I guess, again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just think that it cannot be underemphasized how he's building her up. Mm-hmm. Part of this blossoming, that imagery that's in the first two verses, I think it is her opening up to this whole process of him being clear, him being specific, and of him using every opportunity he can to build her up.
And that developing sense of ease and safety, it's as they're growing together, it is that vulnerability that we've talked about. But what I want to emphasize here is that vulnerability, that opening up, that trusting, it only happens after you have that clarity. It only happens after we have seen these compliments, this intentional pursuit of her and her feelings, and making her feel cherished and blossom, as you said. That there is an order there, and I think that order is intentional as we look at the Scripture, that this is what happens first, and now we start to see that sense of ease and safety that she has with Solomon. And we look at verse 4 of chapter 2. This is the Shunammite woman talking. It says, "He brought me to the banqueting house. His banner over me was love." And again, several of you have probably heard me say this before. That banner over me was love. He brought me to the banqueting house. Banqueting house. What happens at a banquet? Yeah, you eat, right? It's a feast. It's a celebration. It's a time of rejoicing and fun. And the idea that they are at the banqueting house, it's speaking to the way that he is nurturing her, that he is almost feeding, in a sense, her soul because of all of this life-giving impact, that she is being nourished by it, that he is building into her and helping her to be sustained by the compliments and the impact that he has by speaking to her. So that's verse 4. I'm not hitting all of these verses, not skipping over them. It's just kind of how the book is laid out and hitting some of the highlights. And if we go down to verse 7, it says, "I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem," this is chapter 2, verse 7, "by the gazelles of the does of the field, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases." And what she's saying here is, hey, we know what's ahead of us. We know where this relationship is going, but we're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves. We are going to continue diving into the depths of one another's souls, diving into getting to know one another that much more before we turn on the physical side of our relationship in marriage. And there she is saying, and this is actually repeated, this is a theme, we'll hit on it a little bit more next week, but as you continue to read through Song of Solomon until they get to the point where they're married, you see this pattern repeated over and over again where he says, or she says, let's not awaken love until our pleases. They're not getting ahead of themselves. They're taking their time to build into their relationship, to have that life-giving impact, to let it develop with the effort and intentionality of spending time with one another, building that relationship up before they move forward in their relationship on the physical side. But what we do see here is that there is a growing desire because of the way that that Solomon is treating her, because of the way that they've spent time together, and because of that she was free to acknowledge that she had a growing desire. And this is something else that Matt Chandler speaks to, and I've actually heard people say this before as well, particularly with guys, is they say, God, I just want you to take this away from me, their struggles with lust or whatever, and his response is, he always says, this is Matt Chandler, you really don't. You really don't want God to take away. What you really should be asking for is for God to give you the discipline, to be empowered with the discipline and the strength to be obedient, because what he's given you in your heart, that's a gift from God, and we shouldn't ask God to take away from one of his gifts. What we should be asking is that he strengthens us with the power and the discipline to save that until it's appropriate. So, a dating relationship provides life-giving impact because Solomon, there was reciprocity, he created clarity. It progresses with effort and intentionality over time when you listen to godly counsel, when you're initiating purity, and dating relationship, it prepares for life together because, again, we look at that clarity. There's a growing sense of ease and safety between the two of them. And I hit on this earlier. Like I said, dating for Christians in a Christian relationship, dating does have a specific trajectory. You are working towards marriage when you're in a dating relationship. You're not just dating to date. And that's what we're going to hit on a little bit more next week in courtship. It's that kind of that next step in the dating relationship. But yeah, don't just date for the sake of dating. We see that highlighted in page 68 here. That as a dating relationship is moving along, and you see these healthy things that we've looked at in the first 2 chapters, it is important to apply a healthy dose of grace to these evaluations. We talked about this a little bit last week of applying grace to giving grace to the other person, because you're going to need it yourself. And nobody is perfect. Only Christ is perfect. You're not going to find somebody who is going to be that perfect match for you because nobody's perfect. But as you're navigating a dating relationship, part of that is getting to know each other and working through misunderstandings and hurt feelings, not just saying, hey, we had a fight, this isn't going to work out, because I think he actually says this in the next chapter, but you're going to fight with someone for the rest of your life. Like that's going, if you're going to be married, you're going to be fighting with that person. And what the statement that he says is, his wife's name is Lauren, do you want it to be with Lauren? And for him that answer was yes, because in his eyes she was worth it. But don't try to hold out for perfection. This is what he's telling us, because only Jesus can offer that. You're not going to find perfection in a spouse. You're only going to find that through Jesus and the cross. Instead, what you should be asking yourself if you're evaluating someone as a potential dating relationship, does he show a trajectory of health and godliness in his life? The things that we talked about last week, things that we talked about on the panel. Is there that trajectory of health and godliness and spiritual growth as he follows Christ with his heart? Is she willing to repent when she does wrong? And you can ask these for guys or girls, but as you spend time with this person, as you see them make mistakes, because inevitably that's going to happen, what is her response to that? What is his response to that? Is she continuing to live in that sin, or is she turning that and trying to follow Christ with all of her heart? Is he a faithful follower of Jesus Christ? Is he somebody who has over time shown, yes, Jesus is his ultimate goal. That's what he's striving to be more like, is to be Jesus, or is he just pursuing me because he wants to be married? What is the intentions there? Is he really following Jesus faithfully? These are the types of questions to ask yourselves. So as we arrive at courtship, transition from dating into courtship, we're going to look more next week about what that's like. But when the trajectory for both partners in dating relationship is mutual Christ likeness, both parties are following Christ with their hearts, the next step for that dating couple is to chart their trajectory together. And it's to say you're moving from simply dating into a more serious version of dating. And that's where we're at with the courtship stage as we're moving through Song of Solomon. They're entering into that more serious version of dating where they're dating exclusively. They are, this is a defined relationship. Courtship is when you're not just dating to date anymore, but you're dating to move towards marriage. And the courting couple, as we get into this next week, they ask themselves, they're still in the dating phase, they're not engaged yet, but are you not going to be together for the rest of their lives? As the relationship progresses into courtship, the answer is yes, we believe so. You're not covenanted yet, but that's what you're looking towards. That's what you're fighting for. That's how you are progressing in the relationship. So, call this message "Testing the Waters, Diving into Dating," just to kind of give at least one analogy because I haven't done that yet, and I'd love to. This one's really good. So we talked about dating is testing the waters. You're tipping your foot in. Attraction, like to kind of sum this whole series up in a sense, even though we're not done yet. Attraction is getting to the pool, getting to the beach. You look out, you say, hey, that water looks good. Other people are enjoying that water. I think I might want to get in that water. And then, let's say you're at the pool and you've got your swimsuit on, you put on your sunscreen, you've got your nice little blotch of right on the nose, it's bright and white. And you go up and you're like, well, do I really want to get in that? I'm not sure, Maybe it feels okay, but I don't know, it's a little scary. That water's pretty deep. There might be sharks in there, who knows? But you're testing the waters. You're deciding if you're going to jump in and make that full commitment. And what courtship is, as we get into that next week, you're preparing to jump in. You've decided, you've tested the water, you've said, hey, this looks good. So maybe you get up on the diving board and you're testing it out. You're really like, am I ready to go here? And hopefully nobody comes in and shoves you in from behind, pulls the shotgun up, makes shotgun marriage. But you're getting you're getting ready to jump in. You're both standing there and you're looking, is this something we're going to take the next step into? So that's where we're headed next week with courtship. And it says, courtship is preparing to jump, walking up to the edge, making sure that it is the correct decision to dive in head first. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. Thank you guys, and we'll close in prayer.